All right, well, welcome once again to the Old Cow Report on this beautiful January 6, 1997. Fred, this is the 6th day of the year. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, sir.
And of course, with me is my old rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred the True Stafford. And how long we been on this old show now, Fred?
25 years, right?
40, 25 years, somewhere in that nature?
No, I don't
Okay,
think so.
all right. Well, there you have it, Fred the True Stafford. And, of course, Fred's been missing, and we found out he was up on the roof tending the rubber trees because, you know, Fred, it's hard to grow rubber trees in the middle of the winter.
It is?
I'll tell you.
Well, nobody told me that.
I know. You know, Fred, if you'd have listened to the wisdom...
I don't believe it.
If you'd have listened to the wisdom of the day, Fred, you'd have never brought those 10,000 rubber trees back from Vietnam, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I know, and I didn't bring any at all from Vietnam.
Okay, well, boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about tonight, Fred. As usual, there's a lot to talk about.
Yes.
And we're starting our manyth year, Fred. We'll just say manyth. And, of course, Roy Rogers Hoff in there, the old rusty, trusty engineer, has been with us for, I don't know, probably about as long as you've been with us, Fred. And
yes, sir.
Of course, he takes care of all the engineering in there, and I'm sure he's got the master running so that we can always make sure that we have a full record of this for historical purposes. Okay. And I've seen him moving quickly, so evidently he did. Now, Fred, you know, today in history, actually, I made a big boo-boo, Fred, and I typed out on the old internet, tomorrow in history. So we're close to it anyway, so we're going to go by what happened on January 7th, which is on January 7th, Fred, 1789, the first U.S. presidential election was held. So back then they had the elections in January.
Yeah.
And who did they vote for on that first time around, Fred, 1789?
Oh, I think they elected our first president, the father of our country, George Washington.
Well, Fred, you know, I'm glad you got that right. But you know, Fred, that probably 35 to 50% of high school freshmen could not answer that question correctly?
I'm not surprised.
George Washington. And of course, he's on every dollar bill. There ain't a United States dollar bill, paper dollar bill out there that's in circulation right now that I know of that doesn't have his picture on it. And still, it's hard for a lot of people to identify him as the first president. And of course, Fred, he went through quite a struggle, him and them troops of Valley Forge. That was in the winter time, that very terrible winter there where they struggled to keep the revolution going and came through to victory. And of course, on the bottom of your screen there, cows at discover-net.net, for those of you who would like to write us an email message. We're always available. Okay, well, before we make a special phone call tonight, I want to bring up something here, and I'm sure that the receiver on the receiving end of this is not going to be too happy, Fred, but the Leader Telegram in their January 3rd, 1997 editorial page. The headline for the editorial of that day was, "Living Wage Plan Needs Close Look." And it goes through defending raising the wage to $7.70 an hour for any company that receives $25,000 or more in state loans, grants, or tax breaks. And the company, let's see here, down at the bottom it says, Tommy Thompson has worked long and hard to improve Wisconsin's business climate. He has enjoyed a lot of success, judging by the enviable low current unemployment rate. But that unemployment rate has brought a bonanza to the working men and women in the Chippewa Valley. We have not been able to dig our way out of the hole created by historically low wages. Of course, we are one of the lowest metropolitan areas paid wages in the country. Leader Telegram goes on to say, we probably don't have to remind you that in 1995, Eau Claire had the lowest pay level among the 55 metropolitan areas in the Great Lakes region, and it covers a lot of area, from Minneapolis, St. Paul, all the way over to probably New York. Surely not all companies can pay $7.70 an hour. That would be a lot to expect from a fast food franchise, for example. But state officials should be using taxpayers' resources to bring jobs to Wisconsin that families can live on. That's why Chuck Chwala proposal deserves a fair hearing. Of course, they're talking about the proposal that Chuck Chwala, Senator Chuck Chwala, who ran against Tommy Thompson and was humiliated in a race a couple years back where he ran for governor.
In Fond du Lac and a couple of places over there on the east, they pay $6.50 an hour in the fast food restaurants.
Okay.
You can't get help otherwise.
Chwala, what is so wrong with State Senator Chuck Chwala's idea to promoting a living wage in Wisconsin? Republicans and business leaders are aghast that Chwala would have the audacity to propose that any business seeking financial assistance from the state should be required to pay wages slightly above the federal poverty level. Under Chwala's plan, any company that receives $25,000 or more in state loans, grants, or tax breaks would have to pay at least $7.70 an hour and also provide health insurance to workers. So basically, the Leader Telegram is agreeing with this, that this sounds like a good proposal, and it needs to deserve a fair hearing. So I got to thinking to myself. I put on my old thinking cap down there at the old ranch where I live out there in the outback, western part of the southwestern part of the Eau Claire. Out on the ranch, I got to thinking. I put on the old thinking cap, and it just dawned on me. The Eau Claire Leader Telegram got themselves a big old tax break and got put in a TIF district to build a new building up somewhere around up on the north side of town there. They got a special TIF district created just for them so that they could get tax breaks. And so they qualify as one of those companies that receive at least $25,000 or more in state grants, state loans, grants, or tax breaks. So I said to myself, well then, you know, the Leader Telegram qualifies for that, then they should be able to put up or shut up here. And so I looked back in the want ads of the Leader Telegram for that day, and I find down here route drivers. The Leader Telegram is now accepting applications for substitute route drivers. All applications must have a valid Wisconsin's driver's license with a satisfactory driving record and be at least 18 years of age. Starting pay will be $4.75 per hour for weekday hours. Leader Telegram.
Yes.
Now, does that sound like a living wage, Fred?
No.
$4.75 an hour is all the Leader Telegram is willing to pay out the back door for the guys that deliver the papers. But up here on the front door here, where you're reading their fluffy editorials, they're calling for people to pay $7.70 an hour for any company that receives $25,000 or more in state grants or tax breaks. Well, I guarantee you the Leader Telegram got a healthy tax break when they got that TIF district up there so that they could build their new plant. So there you have it.
Yes.
And we went after the Leader Telegram for many, many months on the cigarette issue, where on one hand they're writing editorials on how cigarettes are killing people, and on the other hand running full-page ads for cigarettes. Well, here they're at it again. This time they're not willing to pay the piper. One case they're willing to pay $4.75 an hour to their own employees. On the other hand, they're saying this Chwala guy has something here with this $7.70 an hour. But they won't pay a living wage themselves. So they need to go back to the drawing boards once again, Freddie boy.
Yes.
All right, Fred. We're going to call somebody here and get the latest scoop on some information here in town.
What's that?
And then we'll find out just exactly what's going on here in town. As soon as the old phone gets in business there. Hello, is Lorraine there?
Hello.
Let me turn this up here. Hello, Lorraine?
Yes.
There, Roy, you got that, Roy?
Uh-huh.
How's the sound on that telephone? Is it too loud? All right, you viewers out there, if you can't hear us, you have to call in there. Can you? I can't hear you too. Okay, Lorraine, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right, Lorraine. Well, Lorraine, besides running for the city council here, I noticed something here. Yeah, let's see here. I noticed something in the recent paper here where it looked like the city was going to try and knock that referendum off the ballot that's coming up here. Could you enlighten the viewers about that a little bit? And what we're speaking about here now is the referendum that, let's see, the referendum that that's going to be on the spring ballot, the April ballot, discussing, or actually a yes or no vote on whether the citizens of the city of Eau Claire, and this will be for the citizens inside the city limits of the city, will be able to vote for this referendum. Lorraine, I hear there was a snag there at the last minute, and it looks to me from the article, it looks to me like the city and the city attorney and Mihail Mahalik were up burning the midnight oil for many, many nights trying to figure out an angle how to keep this off the ballot, Lorraine. But how did it come out? There was an article in the paper just a couple days ago saying that it looked like a close call there. It was on the Friday, January 3rd paper. It looked like at the last minute there, the underhanded, conniving, sneaking people down there which work for the city were going to try and keep this off the ballot. So how did it come down?
Well, I didn't really know much about it until Friday morning when I got the call from Don Norrell, and all he told me was that it wasn't valid because the people didn't write Eau Claire behind their name. I know I did when I signed it, but I guess that people thought it was already there, just like I did. And all I know is that I called down to the election board and talked to the lady that Mr. Norrell said had instructed them, and she apologized all over because she said that she didn't realize how the referenda was worded. I thought it a little strange that you'd give out any kind of an opinion if you didn't, but it turned out, I guess, that most of it was done with telephone conversations, but then you can't get something back in writing from down there unless you ask for it in writing. So then a letter was written a few days later, then on the 23rd of December, and then they faxed along with it, as I understand this, no, it wasn't there, a copy of the referenda. Well, then when I called down there and told her that I didn't understand this because I wrote that top of that thing, and it says right there, we, the undersigned electors of the city of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Well, it said it right there. Well, then they said that we would have to bring in all the people that circulated them and have them sign some affidavit. Well, I said the bottom says the same thing. It says their name, and it says a qualified elector in the city of Eau Claire residing at, and they wrote in their home address then. Eau Claire was already there.
Okay, Lorraine, well, let me refresh the viewers here. This was in the Friday paper last Friday. It
was a deadline.
The city of Eau Claire on Thursday approved petitions to force a referendum on a proposed downtown convention center. The approval came despite last-minute efforts to disqualify the petitions. Now, Lee said city manager Don Norrell called her on Thursday and the deadline for validating the petition, so they waited till the last minute to inform her the signatures were invalid because people did not sign Eau Claire behind their names. Now, and then in the next paragraph, Norrell says, down a little farther, he says, Norrell said that this was not an attempt by city officials to discredit the petitions. Then why in the H is he calling you up and telling you they're invalid, Lorraine? Well, it sounds to me like they stayed up night after night, probably till 2 or 3 in the morning, trying to figure this angle out. And then he goes on to say, we never questioned that the people weren't from Eau Claire. The only thing we questioned was the technical aspect. So they looked for a technical reason to keep this off the ballot, and they did it right up to the deadline of Thursday. Well, they had to eat a bunch of crow at the last minute because the election board in Madison said it was just fine and hunky-dory. Right, Lorraine?
Well, when I called and asked them how many times Eau Claire had to be there, the way it was written, the lady said she didn't realize it said that.
So,
They must not have read it, only looked at what they sent them after they called them several times on the telephone, because
this sounds like some double hooey from Ted Fisher and his little elves down there at City Hall. I bet they were really burning the midnight oil, Lorraine. So,
Well, I know they-
once again, they
They're-
had to eat a bunch of dead old dirty crow.
well, the thing is, they've already spent a bunch of grant money and everything else getting it all ready for that arena. They were keeping it away. I cannot understand how they can put before the people that tax money has nothing to do here. We're responsible for bonds. There is no way that they could even start building it without tax money per se. But the whole thing is, these mentors they've set up are falling by the wayside all the time. La Crosse, as I understand it, is subsidizing with tax money about $1 million a year. Besides, they got a sales tax and they can't do it. And
Huh.
right in the paper they say if we keep it within, if we would put it for a referenda now, it would come tumbling down. But if we keep it in the city council, that's what they tried to do here.
Okay, now, Lorraine, this is going to be on the ballot. They had to eat crow, and it
It has-
says here, according to state law, okay, the city council at its Tuesday, January 14th meeting will vote on whether to approve placing the referendum question on the ballot. But, according to state law, the referendum will be implemented regardless of the council's action. So it sounds like even the city council, which was sitting around conniving on a way to kill this, they can't kill it either, even if they vote against it.
Well, they can't. But here's the thing. They'll all vote unanimously now to put it on the ballot. You know that. They wouldn't be strong enough to support coming back with their own on there now, because they know they have to do it.
Well, Lorraine, there's 3,332 people that said they don't want this arena, and they're all within the city limits. So my math figures out that's about 33,000 voters that say they don't want it. So that city council down there better wise up and realize that their jobs are on the line, because some of these people will vote for Superman or Mighty Mouse instead of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure I have an active telephone line. Ever since my opponent, Caroline Courtness, stood up at that meeting and said, when they came to the stop meeting, that she was well aware, and I can quote this, I am well aware that no one in my district wants anything to do with this arena convention center. I've only talked to 2 people who were interested in that. She said they didn't even want it unless there was no tax money there. And when asked how she would vote, she said she'd vote for the best of the city.
Well, Lorraine, she's on one of the committees that's been pushing this thing for the last 2 years.
Well, I know she is. That's what I'm trying to say.
So
You
it
know
sounds to
that.
me
But
like
now,
she's full of hot air, too.
well, when the election comes up, she's going to vote to put it on the ballot. You better believe it, because now she's going to have to eat crow, because too many people heard that. And if you, she isn't even one of the ones that are voting for the whole city of Eau Claire. We got 5 of them on there now. But she said her district didn't want it, but we know what she was going to do. Now you watch her turn tail, but I think it might be too late. From the calls I've gotten anyway, I don't know. I know that we will be amending on stop, and there will be a recall election.
Okay, Lorraine, now the bottom line is, when this comes on the ballot, some people say it's too much wording there and it's hard to understand. The bottom line is, basically, if you say no, that means that you don't want your tax dollars used to build some big white elephant on the river, right?
The only people that don't understand the referendum are some of those pea-brains on the city council. The rest of them all do. They knew what they were signing.
So if I vote, if I go to the polls and X in no, I'm saying I don't want the doggone thing in town, right?
If you check no, then you are binding these people at the city level from using any tax money, any revenue that comes into the city, or anything else, and that'll protect the county board if all of a sudden they want a sales tax, because the sales tax is a tax. And if a no vote will say, if you want an arena, you find a way to pay for it, run it, and get the streets ready for it, and everything else.
So Mahalaholic and Courtness and the other bunch will have to pay for this deal, and the taxpayers won't get stuck with it, right?
Well, unless they can find some other underhanded way of doing it. But they got a lot of people to fight, 3,300 people. And really, if we'd had until February 1st, like we thought we had, they'd had 10,000 signed. I've got some here that haven't been turned in, and people are still calling about it. That's how much they trust them, too. But it'll be interesting to see how 11 people come up with why they should have the power to put one of their own on when all of these people voted it. Who are they? Who do they think they're supposed to be supporting? They're supposed to be supporting these people.
Well, they're supporting
commerce.
They're supporting that 50 or so insiders that are going to clean up on this thing if they can stick it with the taxpayers.
Well, we're going to have a bill to pay because this thing is going to be between $50 and $51 million, not 21.
That's just at the front end, Lorraine. You're talking about deficits for the next 20 years or more, too,
Well, yeah,
until they turn the thing into another sawmill or something.
Well,
That's what it'll end up. It'll be some kind of hi-fi, high-science sawmill, and they'll go back to sending logs down the river or something.
Well, look at Mankato. They've already severed their management deal because they were told this year the deficit to plan for was $29,200, and now it's the time to pay the fiddler, and it's $250,000.
Okay, now, Lorraine, you still think that the city council might actually try and put another referendum on there to confuse the voters?
Oh, I'm sure. If they get a chance, they will. They don't care what they do. Every one of them except one voted to use tax money. I don't care whether it comes from block grants or what it is. You'd think that little strip along Forest Street's the only place that's got blight in the city. They spent it all down there.
Well,
Yes, though. I knew this before I left the council. I even said to Don,
I don't think the federal government...
Ellen Arena.
Lorraine, I don't think the federal government's going to hand over $50 million to build some arena down there so a bunch of drug addicts can come in here and listen to rock music.
If they get any rock music to listen to, they only had one in the whole 2 years they've been open at Mankato. They're going belly up. They're using it for a clubhouse now.
Well, that's what I was saying. Let's get the Eau Claire Curling Club. They're the ones that they always use to get the seed money for these big pie-in-the-sky dreams of theirs. Let's get the curling club to put up $10,000, and that's a good hunk of seed money for that $51 million, Lorraine.
Yeah, but we'd still be paying.
And then the curling club will end up with it 5 years from now when it's sitting there empty.
And probably never pay for it. It'll be another TIF district.
Why don't we get the JCs in there? Maybe they can put up a couple grand.
I don't know. I am just so fed up with everything. There's so many things that we need to do for the common person in the city of Eau Claire. We've let our parks go to pot. The streets have gone to pot. Of course, Mihailoff thinks I did that. In the 6 years they did it my way when I was only on there 2 years.
Well, Lorraine, you know, if everybody drank Flavin Pop, they'd get their mind off that stupid arena. And on to building sidewalks and streets and cutting down on all these highfalutin, high-paying paper shufflers that they got that keep jacking our taxes up. You know, most of the taxes go towards salaries. To people sitting around shuffling papers and arguing over their next vacation and who's going to go play golf this Thursday.
Well, I had to laugh the way Mihailoff...
They should drink Flavin Pop, Lorraine.
How can Mihailoff back down? He knew it was a Taj Mahal all along. It certainly is for here, let me tell you. It's a Taj Mahal we don't need. And now he's saying that they wanted more money. He knew that all along.
Okay, Lorraine, well, we got many, many callers that want to call in, and we're going to have to get you down here so you can answer some questions. It's too hard to do it this way. We don't have the technology down here. We're just a little old program here. We only got a $50,000 budget here, and we just don't have the equipment to get this thing high-tech. So we're going to have to let you go, and then we're going to take some calls, and hopefully we'll get some feedback on this. And I know you're still resting up from a few personal setbacks, and hope that everything goes good now in your spring election. And I'm sure we'll hear from you again before the election.
I think they better start cleaning up the streets and roads. I'm telling you, we had a rough trip to Marshfield and back today. But it came out so well. He got such a good report, so maybe things are going to be looking up.
Well, Fred, would you like to say goodbye to Lorraine?
So long, Lorraine.
Yep, talk to you
Keep up
later.
the good work.
Okay, we'll see you, Lorraine.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, there. Now you can put up the phone number, the old cow phone, 839-6261. Freddie boy, 1959. the United States recognizes this leader of Cuba.
Fidel Castro.
That was in 1959. We actually thought he was going to be the liberator of Cuba. And look here, almost 40 years later, 1997, 38 years later, we got a terrible mess down there. But back in 59, boy, we thought he was going to be the savior of Cuba.
Well, I knew he wasn't going to be the savior.
A socialist wonderland, Fred, a utopia for all the peoples of the world to look to for leadership.
Yeah, I know.
I'll tell you, I've read stories about...
He was a communist before he had the revolution in Cuba.
A leader of the people, Fred.
Yeah.
That's why so many people are fleeing. Okay, Roy boy. We got a picture here that was in the paper. This one was on Saturday, January 4th, Leader Telegram. It's a picture of a couple of, three of local elected officials praising how they've cut the taxes in the state, Fred.
Yeah.
Of course, there's three Republicans and a Republican, the new leader of the State Department of Revenue. Okay, yeah, we'll take that there in a minute there. But anyway, Roy, can you get a close-up of this? Roy works overtime, and I'll tell you, Fred, he deserves every penny he gets here. You know it?
Yeah.
And it's too bad that Common won't kick in a little bit of money to pay him a decent salary. But anyway, Roy, we got a serious close-up picture here, and that'll be coming up on the screen here in a minute. And as you can see there, it says state lawmakers strive for greater cuts in property tax. And you have Dave Zien there, and you can see a cast on it, or some kind of cast or brace on his left leg. Kate Zeiske's a female in the middle. Then you have the new representative from, what is that, Fred, the 67th district up there. His name's Tom Sikora. Yeah. And then Rob Krybeck from the 93rd. And they're all backing up her claims of how they've done a great job on cutting taxes. And they have, to somewhat degree, on the real estate area, Fred. But of course, state or local governments swooped in there, and school boards, they couldn't. But some of the local entities swooped in there and took a lot of that savings. And of course, they giveth with one hand and taketh with the other. They took away our lottery credit, so we lost that. But these guys here are talking about how, I saw something interesting in here, and on one part it says here, Zeiske credited, let's see here, property taxes levied for 97 will total $4.9 billion, almost 10% below last year's total levy of $5.4 billion. And okay, here it was. Zeiske says, we have just experienced the largest property tax reduction in the history of the state, and we accomplished this without raising any other taxes. And I say, bah humbug and a great big summer sausage baloney. Because I talked to people and they said they're paying more for their license plates, they're paying more for their hunting license, they're paying more for their fishing license.
You bet.
And those are taxes, Freddie boy.
Yes, sir.
Because you got to pay them every time or you can't go out and do those things.
Right.
And everything you can think of was jacked up, Fred, and those are taxes, including gas taxes. So they're telling you a great big fat Republican lie. And I'm a Republican, and I hate to say that. But they're talking out of 3 or 4 sides of their mouth. And these guys have the audacity to stand behind her when she says that.
Yes.
There's 3 Republican legislators. They jacked up every fee they could think of, Fred.
Well, Tom Sikora wasn't in the
well, you have to give him that. You have to give him that, Fred. But it says here the state already is planning on how to return last year's lottery credit and future credits to homeowners in the state. Well, we have to give her credit for that. They better get it back. That's what the whole lottery was set up for, Fred, was for property tax relief. That's the apple of it. That's the whole heart of the thing. If they're not going to give us the tax credit, then cut out the lottery. All right. State Senator Dave Zien said, regardless of past success, I bet he had to swallow hard when he said that, the legislature must keep pushing forward. Well, hopefully instead of pushing forward, they'll push upward and push the taxes downward, including all these fees, and get a rein on that DNR. You got them guys roaming around with guns, busting people and charging all kinds of fines? And they don't have any, you guys don't have any say-so about what they're doing out there. They're passing laws right and left. Who gave them any authority to pass laws? The Constitution of the state said that was the legislator's job. And the governor was supposed to sign them into law. And if he didn't want to, he could veto them. You got a whole government agency out there passing laws and busting people and pulling guns on people and doing all kinds of stuff out there. Independently of you guys down there in Madison. You're supposed to have them under control. You've turned them into a government within a government. A Gestapo within a Gestapo. My gut level feeling is we can do much better. Well, I hope so, Dave, regardless of property tax relief. Zine said that when he was elected to the Senate 3.5 years ago, people said the goal of lowering property taxes without raising other taxes was unreachable. And here we go. Dave sticks a great big size 12 motorcycle boot in his mouth and says, and we did it. In the future, we need to keep the trend going. Next year, we need to drive property taxes down even further. So I say once again, people said the goal of lowering property taxes without raising other taxes was unreachable. And we did it. So Zine is lying when he says that they did it, because they didn't. They raised the gas tax. Went through the roof. We're paying one of the highest amounts of gas taxes in the nation. We're the second highest tax state in the nation. Third, if you count Washington, D.C. as a state, and they're not. The only state that's taxed more than we are is New York. And you want to stand there and talk about how great you're doing? The revolution that you started 10 years ago with Thompson fizzled a long time ago. And you're giving to us with one hand and taking away with two. It's baloney. If you want to get the revolution back on track, then rein in the DNR, which uses a lot of our tax money, and start cutting some of these other fees, and cut off some of the perks you guys got down there in Madison that you're living high on the hog with your high-priced retirement plans and your high-priced health insurance that 250,000 other people in the state don't have. They don't have any kind of insurance. So quit talking out of three sides of your mouth until you're really going to help the people of this state. Because so far in the last 3.5 years, you fed us a lot of baloney, a lot of deer baloney, and a lot of lies. You might have cut the real estate taxes, but you raised the other taxes, many of them. All right, Freddie boy, speaking about taxes, the IRS is sending out their 1997 greetings to expect to pay more taxes. But we're paying an arm and a leg in state taxes, Fred, state income tax. That should have been repealed many, many years ago with this lottery. Shouldn't be any state income tax. These guys are lying, Fred. We're paying a giant state income tax, one of the biggest state income taxes in the country. We're paying the second highest taxes in the country overall. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah. This is kind of to add on to what Lorraine had to say a little bit about them not even cleaning up the streets. I live down in the area where they want to put that arena, and they seem to be just going by, except for Forest Street, where they have to go to the city shops with the plows up.
Well, I notice they do take their time plowing them streets, but
yeah, they do.
Now it looks like they're wanting to farm it out.
You know, it kind of looks that way, huh? Maybe we'll get a better job?
Well, I'll tell you, there's some hanky-panky going on with the wrecker business in this area.
Yeah.
And now you have to belong to a certain wreckers union to get any of the wrecking business in case the sheriff's department has a wreck out on the interstate. You have to belong to this elite wreckers union to be called. And so now they're wanting to farm out this plowing into private hands. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, that the good old boys will get the biggest cut out of the deal. That's the way things are run. And I'm telling you, you look and see what kind of cigars those guys and those women are smoking in them smoke-filled rooms. And if they're Cuban, pull it out of their mouth and throw it on the floor and stomp on it and say, listen, buddy, this is America. And if you don't like it, go back to Cuba.
You got that right.
All right, well, thanks for calling in. Okay, Fred, what do you got there?
Well, I got something here of the Reverend Robert Schenck, who was a leader in the 1992 spring of abortion protests and in Buffalo, now working in Washington, D.C., admonished President Bill Clinton on Christmas Eve about the abortion president that as the Clinton declared prepared to receive communion during a service at the National Cathedral. According to the Reuters report, Schenck was detained and frisked by Secret Service agents for about 15 minutes after the service ended. And he said that God will hold you to account, Mr. President.
Huh. Well, that's amazing, Fred. You learn something new every day. You know what?
That's right.
Okay, we're going to take another call here in a second, Fred, but had one other thing on the diatribe about the state taxes. Tommy Thompson's election fund has hit $1 million, Fred, and when's the election? Next year? Governor Tommy Thompson, election campaign treasury is worth $1 million as he considers whether to run for a four-year term in '98. We have a number of people who are very interested and right now are testing the waters for gubernatorial bids. That's what the Mark Sosterich, state Democratic chairman, said. He said Thompson's large campaign fund was meant to prevent any Republicans from challenging the incumbent, but it wouldn't scare off any Democrats. Well, I'll tell you, Democrats, when you can find a candidate that's not some left-wing radical crybaby wimp like that koala out there, find a decent, conservative, pro-life, pro-gun Democrat, you're going to beat Thompson. Until then, you might as well forget it. And add into that pro-tax reform, cutting taxes, real cuts, all across the board in all kinds of fees. And fees and gas taxes are taxes too, for those of you out there in La-La Land. They're taxes too, because you pay them on a regular basis. And if you're going to be a cosmetologist, you're paying a fee. If you're going to be a dentist or a doctor, you're paying a fee. If you're going to be a funeral director, you're paying a fee. Those are all taxes. They're hidden and they don't show up on everybody's tax bill, but they're still taxes and they get raised. So the Tommy Thompson revolution derailed a long time ago. He's been living off of the welfare fluff for many years, Fred, and that he's been riding on that one issue, welfare, and he has done some reform in that area. But I haven't seen the reform trickle down to where we're emptying out these county socialist social working outfits. They're still packed to the gills, and if you want to see how big they are, you don't have to go down to the new wing of the courthouse here and go through the many cubicles where they have the socialists in there. And they're rat's nests of lesbians and all kinds of other stuff, and they're working at the county's, at the taxpayers' expense. Go down to the old farmer store building and take a tour through where they used to be, Fred, and see cubicle after cubicle and office after office that are empty now. And you can see what socialism does to people, Fred. It creates a symbiotic relationship between thousands of welfare recipients on this end and thousands of socialist social workers on this end. And they try to this balancing act. They got to keep everything going, because if there's too few welfare recipients, then they have to lay off the social workers. Well, so far I haven't seen it, Fred. I've seen the welfare rolls supposedly go down, but the socialists down there down at the courthouse, they're still in there, Fred. They're still getting them raises. They're still in the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 income bracket. Where is the savings to the taxpayer? We're pushing people off the welfare rolls right and left by the thousands. We just kicked 140,000 off the other day right here in Eau Claire County. When are we going to start dumping some of these symbiotic socialists that are feeding off these people that are in dire straits? Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Fine. How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty cool. I can't believe I got through finally. I'm just wondering what you guys think about this whole, Packer mania that's going on.
Well, I think Freddie's a Packer fan, aren't you, Fred?
You bet.
You look like an avid Packer fan.
Did you watch the game, Fred?
Yes.
I'm wearing my green right here.
I think it's kind of
There's some
sad
gold
how,
on there too.
There seems to be a lot of bandwagon fans out there, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I've always been a Packer fan as long as they're not playing the Vikings. Then I have a hard time because I went to grade school. I lived over in Minnesota as a child.
Oh, yeah, I'm a huge Viking fan. I'm from Minnesota myself.
So I like them both, and I'm glad to see the Packers have got this far. And
Yes.
next year the Vikings will just kick their butts. But this year we have to vote. We have to root for the old Packers, Freddie.
Yes.
But I'll tell you, it's not going to be easy next weekend.
Definitely not.
I mean, for an expansion team, these guys are really showing the rest of the league what good is.
But you got to let Fred know that the Packers are going down next year.
Next week or next year?
Next year.
Yeah, the Vikings will probably beat them again.
Oh, yeah.
No, sir.
It's always a rivalry. It doesn't matter if the Vikings and the Packers are last in the standings. When they get together, it's war.
Yep. You guys got some Bevs handy or what?
Some what?
Some Bevs? Kick back? Drink some beers for the game or what?
I don't know, Fred. I think he hits a little bit of the wine down there. Don't you drink a glass of wine and light the candles when they're playing, Fred?
No, I don't, but I've thought about it.
Well, it's a good thing you're still thinking.
You haven't hit the wine yet today, Fred, or what?
No, I didn't.
That's cool.
Well, thanks for calling in there. We always like to hear a good Packer fan. Okay, our next issue here. Backer deserts Gingrich. That was the headline on December 30th. Not backers desert Gingrich, but it says backer deserts Gingrich. So if you just glanced at it, you'd say, oh, even the Republicans are down on Gingrich. Well, there's been all kinds of heavy propaganda against Gingrich and how, to make the liberal, left-wing, radical, Democratic National Committee sponsored hack job and slash job they're doing on Gingrich will all go for naught tomorrow when Gingrich is renamed Speaker of the House for another 2 years, Freddie. That's my prediction. How about you?
I hope he doesn't get it.
You do?
They need to put somebody in there who,
Yeah, like who?
like Henry.
Roy, turn off the phone and the cow thing for a second there.
Henry.
Our beloved leaders right there. Newt Gingrich
Oh,
and Dick Armey.
That's.
Our
He's no
beloved-
more a leader than I am.
Yeah, what have you been drinking? These guys are leaders, Fred, until tomorrow. Until they get...
I don't think he hasn't led us anywhere in the last year and a half. He got himself in a lot of trouble, though.
For what? For teaching a college class?
Yeah.
What do you think this is, Fred? This is a college class.
Yes,
We got
son,
thousands of college students
right,
watching this program right
we
now.
Don't want them, we don't want them doing that.
We got junior high and high school and college kids by the thousands watching this program right now. We teach them stuff every week when we're on.
I know it. They teach them to vote for somebody else.
And that's all
Then
Newt
Gingrich.
was doing, was having a little class there. He was teaching government.
He was spending the money he wasn't supposed to spend.
I bet you don't even know what the whole thing's about, Fred.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, well, the Loyal Order of the Raccoons is now in business. Is now in order. Is there any new business?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Fred, we better tell the folks that we have some very serious business here, Fred. Raccoon rabies spreads into Ohio. And it's a good thing our show isn't in Ohio yet, Fred, because they'd probably be coming after this hat.
Yeah.
They probably want to outlaw this hat because of the rabies scare in Ohio amongst our brethren, the raccoon.
Yeah.
Rabies among raccoons has begun spreading from the East Coast into the Midwest. So we're going to have to put up a serious fight out there, beloved raccoons. The Loyal Order of the Raccoons is under a serious threat from this. They're going to be killing off raccoons by the thousands just because one raccoon goes out there and bites somebody. Okay, a rabid raccoon was captured in May. Way back in May, Fred, in Poland, Ohio. No wonder. I can see the Polacks are at it again, Fred. They're trying to outlaw raccoons just because of one little old raccoon had a little foam on his mouth.
Yes.
They want to take it out on the rest of us. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, Freddie, I like what you got to say. You sober yin to his raging yang there, but Chuck, I don't think you know what you're talking about sometimes.
Who, Fred?
No, Chuck, I don't think you know what you're talking about.
On which point?
On just about everything you say. I don't think that's a raccoon on your head, for one. For 2, you don't know what you're talking about for taxes and all that stuff. For 3, with all that shit all over you, you look like some kind of...
All right, Fred. Well, there's another fine example of a poorly educated.
There's a man who's on the ball.
Poorly educated in the area of English caller, and he needs to go back to high school
I think he was right.
get some training in English. And Fred, if this ain't a raccoon hat, I'll eat my hat.
Well, you will go ahead and eat it.
All right, okay, all right. Fred, we had one of our first official drive-by shootings in Eau Claire County. Isn't it amazing?
It was in Altoona.
It's in Altoona. Well, that's Eau Claire. And they arrested the perpetrators.
Yes.
And hopefully they'll make examples of them so that so some of the other wannabes next summer won't get the idea that they can get away with it. Okay, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I think what Fred's saying about Gingrich, he knows what he's talking about. If that was a Democrat doing that, you wouldn't be making excuses for him.
Hey, a Democrat has done many, many times more than that, and he's still in office, and he just got reelected. His name was William Jefferson Clinton.
Well,
and what he's done far outweighs by tons what little old Newt did. But Fred can't see that because he's got a log in his eye, but he wants Newt to take the toothpick out of his eye.
I don't think we ought to take him out, period.
Yeah. Well, Fred, the city planners are at it again, and they're going to reassess every one of your properties out there. If you own property in the city of Eau Claire, they're coming to get you. And they give with one hand and take away with 3. And if they're smoking Cuban cigars, I wouldn't even let them in the house.
Yeah.
I'd take the Cuban cigar out of their mouth, throw it on the sidewalk, stomp on it, and say, buddy, get out of my yard.
Yeah.
The law says you don't have to come inside, and I'm telling you, don't come inside my house. You want to assess my land, you can look at the outside of the property. Because the law says they don't have to come in your house. They're going to come around and scare you and say, hey, I'm the assessor with the city, and I want to assess your property. I want to come in your house and see where you've remodeled your basement or remodeled that extra bathroom or that extra bedroom so that we can jack up your taxes. That's what they're wanting to get in your house for. Well, the law says that you don't have to allow them in your house. They've got all the records they need right down at City Hall to assess your property. So be mindful of that, because they're going to try and jack up your property valuation by upwards of 25% or more. So be careful. Okay, what do you got there, Fred?
This is from the Wanderer, and it says, Mary D. and Xmas. Is the federal court in Denver ruled on the 24th of December in 1961. Utah law banning late-time abortion imposes an undue burden upon a woman's right to choose. And that's one thing we got to watch out, and it's all Mr. Clinton has done has been appointing liberal judges that are pro-abortion, pro-homosexual, and whatnot. And if we keep at it, we're going to have a lot of them in that aren't in office.
Well, that's for sure, Fred. And you know, Fred, I was just reading here. The Supreme Court will rule on the Paula Jones case this spring, whether she can pursue sexual harassment charges against the president while he's still in office. Arguments will be heard later this month. Then the court is expected to take plenty of time reaching a decision. If Clinton loses, a civil trial will probably be scheduled next year, and then you'll just see one of the many, many instances where what Clinton has done is a 20-foot redwood, 20-foot in diameter redwood tree, 100 feet tall, compared to one little toothpick that Newt had in his infraction, Fred.
Well,
and you'll see the difference.
Newt shouldn't have had any in his,
This is just the tip of the iceberg, Freddie boy. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Chuck and Fred?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what you're saying and everything.
Are you in close to the phone there? We can hardly hear you.
Okay. But how would you fix it? You criticize everything, but how do you fix it?
We're fixing it. By you listening to the show, you're being educated, and you're standing up and saying, we're paying too much taxes. We're going to vote these bums out. They talk out of one side of their mouth, and the next time you see them, they're talking out of the other side, smoking Cuban cigars. So you got to call them on it. You got to write to them. You got to write to your city council. You got to write to your county board. You got to write to your state legislators. You got to write to your U.S. congressmen. You got to write to your U.S. senators. You got to write to your state governor. You got to write to your United States president. You got to write to the Supreme Court. You have to keep them. You have to keep their feet on the fire. They know that for every letter they receive or every phone call they receive, there's 10 people back home that agree the same way as they do. They know that, and that's what they take notice of. You think those bums in Madison are going to do any real reforms unless you keep their feet on the fire? They're going to come up here and do their little fluff pieces, and get their little fluffy pictures in the paper.
Oh, you talked about it a little bit before. Do you think Thompson's done a good job in the last 10 years or not?
In the last, overall in the 10 years, I think he's kind of lived off this welfare thing. That's been the centerpiece of his so-called reforms. He's reformed welfare, and he's worked not welfare. That's starting to kick in now, and we're going to see the fruits of those labors. But on the other hand, though, we've seen fee after fee be jacked up, and we've seen and the state income tax. You're still paying that state income tax, aren't you? Well, there's still states out there that don't pay any state income tax, and they're doing just fine. We're the second highest tax state in the nation.
What is it, 7% top?
I mean, if you've lived here all your life, you're used to this baloney. But other people that have moved in here are saying this is ridiculous. They don't pay a third of the taxes for their house. So they finally cut the taxes on your house a little bit. You're still paying twice as much as Illinois and Minnesota. Jeez. Okay, Fred, what do you got there? You got a little paragraph?
Book documents anti-Christian bias. A new book, The Gates of Hell Shall Not Prevail, by Dr. D. James Kennedy, with Jerry Newcomb's documents are cultures, anti-Christian bigotry in media, the movies, and public schools, and suggests to believers what they can do about it. The book documents that those who attack Christians are on the wrong side of history and Scripture.
Well, Fred, you know...
That's from the AFA Journal.
Okay, Fred, here, as we get closer to the end times, and that's for the people out there that believe in the end times, and you're a believer, aren't you, Fred?
Yes.
As you get closer to the end times, there's a parable in the Bible about the wheat and the tares. And you can go out in the summertime and you can look at wheat. And I've done this, Fred, because I read that parable in the Bible, and I said, what in the heck are tares? So I went out there and I looked, and sure enough, Fred, there's wheat and then there's tares. And when you look at them side by side, they look exactly the same, except at harvest time. Then you know the difference, because the wheat has kernels in it and the tares doesn't have anything in it. And then you know the difference. And so as we get closer to the end time, Fred, you're going to see the difference between the wheat and the tares. Need I say more?
Yeah.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, guys. Just want to...
All right, a good, strong voice there.
How you doing?
Those first 5 calls sounded like the same guy.
That's too bad. You know, I just wanted to mention tonight that NBC News mentioned that Social Security money will run out in 22 years. And you know what? I truly look forward to the day when it does run out, and you'll stop complaining about taxes and stop, worrying about what you're going to do about taxes, and start walking the walk and stop talking the talk.
Whatever that means.
That's a good idea.
Maybe you should get an education and figure it out.
What do you mean? I've got more degrees than Carter's got liver pills.
That's good, and I'd like to see them in use somewhere instead of on public access television.
Okay, the Social Security tax, you know why that's going to go broke?
Yep, because of all people like me, right? Because
there's 70 million baby boomers that are going to hit that wall. That's why it's going to go broke. And the bums that are coming up behind us aren't going to pay for us.
Yep.
Because half of them are illegal aliens. All right, Fred.
One of the 5 NEA staff paid over $100,000 a year. National Education Association, NEA, claims to be all about protecting the future of our children, when in reality, the NEA is just like any other labor union, even down to disparity between salaries and those constituencies they allegedly represent.
Well, you know, Fred, I was
That's
always
from the
wondering.
AFA Journal.
You know, Fred, the labor unions have done some good since they organized way back when Jimmy Hoffa was cracking heads back in the 20s and 30s. But you know, where are the labor unions now when there's 200 and some thousand people in this state that don't have any health insurance? Where are the labor unions now when Eau Claire is one of the lowest metropolitan, as far as wages, one of the lowest paid areas of the country? Where are they, Fred? They're all sitting pretty. All the people that are in the union, the ones down there at the courthouse that are in the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, they got their gravy, Fred. Where are they at helping the poor workers out there? Where are they at, Fred? I'll tell you where they're at. They're out driving their 1997 Cadillacs and whatever else, and out riding their snowmobiles on the weekend. They've lost their way.
Yeah, you know, and I was just reading there, of the 608 employees...
They found the government tit and they're sucking on it, Fred, and the union's backing them up at gunpoint to make sure that they stay on the government tit.
Of the 608 employees of the NEA, 126 make in excess of $100,000 a year.
That's for sure. Okay, caller, you're on the air. Where's he at, Roy? Chicken lips. Okay. Fred, I just read something here. Charter schools, talking about the NEA. Charter schools will keep spreading despite intense opposition from school boards. They don't want to relinquish any control to others. Half the states already have standards that allow for charter schools, control of schools and curricula by parents, teachers, and communities. 10 more states will consider bills this year to set up charter schools. And that's from Kiplinger's Washington letter, January 3rd, 1997. So those charter schools are taking hold, Fred.
Yes.
So we have to hope that they continue, Fred, because that gives competition to the socialist school boards all over this country and to their lock on the tax dollar, Fred. And any way that we can free the taxes from the public schools and get that into private schools and into homeschooling, we're better off, because we're going to have better educated children, because we'll have competition. Because it's kind of like NSP. You can't go out there and get another electric company if you don't like NSP. Well, that's the way the public schools have had it for many, many years, Fred. Especially in Wisconsin, that's why our taxes are so high. Because there's no competition. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck, right? I want to know where you think...
Me? Him? Me? Him?
Either one. I want to know why you think the public schools have a lock on the taxes. Where the heck do you get that?
Hey, look at your tax bill. Maybe you don't pay any taxes. Look at your real estate bill.
Lord knows.
Something like 60% of your tax bill.
Well, yeah, Lord knows that public schools have more than enough money to go around. I tell you, it's just flooding the halls with cash.
Well, I'll tell you where the money is. If you get rid of about 25% of the administrators up there, like that vice principal to the vice principal to the assistant principal to the principal, if you get rid of all them bums that are arguing over who's going to go play tennis or go play golf, get rid of them bums and go back to just a principal and assistant principal, and get rid of all the other school psychologists and all the other bums out there. Okay, this is the last call of the evening. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, man, I think you got a problem with Cuban cigars, man. I want to send you a whole box. Why don't you give me your address? I'll send it right to you, eh?
Just send them down here to public access there, okay?
Yeah, well, I think you got a problem with the Cuban cigars, man. I want to know what's with that, you know? Have you ever smoked?
Hey, when Cuba's liberated, I'll smoke one every day for the rest of my life. All right. Well, there we have it, Fred. I had one more thing we wanted to bring up here. We've still got 1 minute. We've got 1 minute on the old clock on the wall there, Freddie boy. 1979, Fred. Vietnam forces captured the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh, overthrowing the Khmer Rouge government. And you know what happened after that?
Yeah.
They partially liberated the country from the murderous Khmer Rouge, who killed over 1 million people. But then the Vietnamese forces set up their own reign of terror, and finally they left as part of the deal to get the relationships more normalized. Okay, I had one big picture here, a big NSP ad here talking about their merger here. This costs over $1,000. And you know NSP doesn't pay any taxes on their real estate here in town? Go ahead, caller, you're on the air. You're the last caller.
What is the point in this show?
The point in this show is to educate uneducated people, maybe like you out there, who need an education to find out that taxes is not going to solve everything, that you need to take more personal responsibility for your own lives, and quit living off the government, because the government steals money out of my pocket, out of Freddie's, and out of other taxpayers' pockets to pay for the freeloaders in society.
A freeloader?
Amen. And there we have it, Freddie boy. Another edition of the Old Cow Report has been put to bed, Fred, and we'll see all you viewers again next week. Adios, amigos and amiguettes, and we'll see you real soon. And don't forget to drink your Flavin Pop. It builds strong bodies and minds 12 ways.